6 candidates vying to fill the seat vacated by a giant on Capitol Hill. Their district bridges city and suburbs, all within Wayne County. Tonight, all 6 candidates are here. This is Decision 2018, the 13th Congressional District Democratic Debate.
Good evening and welcome to this debate between all 6 of the Democratic candidates for the 13th Congressional District. I'm Devin Skillion from Local 4. Great to have you with us tonight. Really important to note here that there is no Republican primary in this heavily Democratic district. And the outcome of this Tuesday's primary will effectively decide the next member of Congress from Michigan's 13th district. Voters of the 13th are also going to notice that there are 2 of these races on their ballot. It appears twice, and that's because there are 2 elections going at once. One is basically the special election to fill the last months of John Conyers' current term. Then the other one is for the new congressional term that will begin next January. Voters need to be aware that that's why you'll see this on your ballot twice. With all that said, let's meet the candidates who are joining us tonight in our Local 4 studios in downtown Detroit. First off, Ian Conyers is here. Next to him, Rashida Tlaib. Bill Wild is here. Brenda Jones, Chanel Jackson, and Coleman Young II. Thank you all very much for coming. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the questions this evening. There will be 2 30-second rebuttals. Each of them has 2 rebuttals to use at their disposal. They'll get my attention, and that's only if they should wish to use them as the evening goes on. But again, each has 2 to use. I will enforce the time limits, as I like to say, politely but ruthlessly. And the order of opening statements was determined with a drawing earlier this evening, and so let's start with opening statements. Each of you will have a minute for that, and let's begin with Ian Conyers.
Thank you. I'm Ian Conyers, the state senator for Michigan's 4th district, serving over 250,000 residents of Detroit and Wayne County. I've been working hard to build jobs, protect neighborhoods, and develop communities. I'm running for Congress because we deserve no less in the city of Detroit, to Westland, Garden City, Highland Park, and all throughout our district. We deserve a congressperson to bring back resources from Washington, D.C. This is a narrative I know personally. I grew up here. I'm one of 8 brothers and sisters, the first to finish high school, the first to finish college, and I want that pathway to the American dream for each and every one of your families. With your support, we'll build it together because we're Detroiters, we roll up our sleeves and get to work. Thank you.
Next opening statement comes from Rashida Tlaib.
Hello, I'm Rashida Tlaib. I'm the eldest of 14 children, and I've been fighting for working families all my life. As I am a proud product of Detroit Public Schools, born and raised in Detroit, I know I am running because I fully believe that we all deserve to live in a just and fair society. Every single one of us has a right to thrive, to live in a society that allows us to breathe clean air, to access quality education, affordable car insurance, to feel safe, to work a good paying job and not live in poverty. So I guarantee you that I will be able to stand up to corporate greed and deliver for our communities, and I'll never back down. And it will be an honor to serve you and your families in the 13th Congressional District.
Thank you. Our next opening statement comes from Bill Wild.
Good evening. My name is Bill Wild. I've got 20 years experience in public service. I proudly served as the mayor of the city of Westland, the 2nd largest city in the 13th Congressional District, for the past 12 years. I've been a regional and national leader on critical issues facing our communities, issues like poverty, infrastructure, transportation, and economic development. As I've traveled throughout the 13th district and talked with families, one thing became crystal clear to me, is that families are tired of the fighting in Washington, D.C. They're tired of the divisiveness. They want to know what happened to the American dream. They want to know that if their children and their grandchildren work hard, that the American dream will be there for them. They also want a congressperson that's going to work hard for them. As a mayor, I've been a roll up my sleeves, hands-on mayor, and if I'm elected as your congressperson, I'll do the same for you.
We're halfway through our candidates thus far with their opening statements. We move now to Brenda Jones.
Good evening to everyone. I am Brenda Jones, candidate for the 13th Congressional District. I want to first thank WDIV for hosting this forum, and then I want to plead to all of the voters to please go out and exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, August the 7th. Experience matters, leadership matters. I have basically been a public servant all of my adult life. I have experience in working in an insurance agency, experience in working in a shoe store. I was a shoe store owner. I have experience being a trustee of the Michigan Municipal League. I have experience as a Block Club Association president. I have experience being a vice president for SIMCOG. I have leadership. I have experience. Brenda Jones, 13th Congressional District.
Thank you. Next opening statement is from Chanel Jackson. Chanel.
Praise the Lord. I certainly want to thank God for the opportunity to be with you all this evening. So my name is Chanel Jackson. I am a former lawmaker, a businesswoman, and a mother. I'm running for Congress because 45% of families in Wayne County can't afford basic necessities after working a 40-hour work week, and it's 60-some% in the city of Detroit. We, everyday people like you and me, deserve to have a voice in the room for us in our nation's highest leadership chamber. I'm an experienced lawmaker. I've passed more laws than anybody running in this race. I've worked in the private sector helping to provide jobs for folks in Wayne County and in the city of Detroit. And I'm a mother who understands the plight of our families and what we're dealing with every day and our concerns for our children. In electing me for Congress, you'll be electing yourself, essentially. You'll be sending your voice into the room in Washington, D.C. I'm looking forward.
And our final opening statement comes from Coleman Young II.
Hi, I'm Senator Young. I want to thank WDIV. I want to thank the chairman, Jonathan Kentlock, and the 13th Congressional District for putting on this debate. I've created over 10,000 jobs, passed historic, landmark civil rights legislation, making sure that Michigan's working women receive mandatory paid leave. I've appropriated over $700 million, $2 million to Focus Hope, $300 million for low-income food and heating assistance, and authorized a $40 million science, technology, engineering, and math project in Wayne State. I get the job done. If you want real experience, and you want real leadership, and you want someone who's not going to tell you what he's going to do, but tell you what he's done and get the job done, vote for Coleman Young.
Thank you all. We'll move now to my questions. Again, you'll each have a minute to answer, and you each have your 2 rebuttal cards in front of you. First off, we often see quite a bit of agreement among candidates in a primary election. You're all Democrats. I assume you all take issue with the current administration and with the current Republican leadership in the U.S. House. I'm hoping to help voters, though, Democratic voters, decide about the issues that actually separate you from your fellow Democratic opponents who are here tonight. So I'd like each of you to describe for me how or why your positions on any particular issue or issues make you a dramatically different choice for voters. And we're back to Ian Conyers to start.
Well, the real thing that separates me from the field is Washington experience on day one. I had the privilege of working in transportation, especially in the field helping women, minorities, and veterans in transportation under President Obama. Washington's a town with old alliances, and I think we need to send someone with fresh ideas to break that up. When I say experience in transportation, I also mean my service in the state Senate, where I currently serve as the Minority Vice Chair of Transportation. Transportation is important for 2 reasons. It gets us where we need to go, and it provides the jobs that we deserve. I've got experience in that in Washington, and I'll put it to work for you on day one.
Same question now for Rashida Tlaib.
I'm a practicing attorney. I have been an immigration attorney and advocate, and one of the things that sets me apart is my lens when it comes to being a child of immigrants. I can tell you firsthand, I have seen how broken our immigration system is. I have been discussing the pushback and abolishing ICE, which did not exist before and is now militarizing our communities and our neighborhoods. And that approach, that kind of pushback against the policing and many of our families in the 13th Congressional District not feeling safe because of that, that sets me apart. But also more importantly is the fact that I go beyond just voting the right way. I will push the envelope and call people out when they vote the wrong way. I will also always stand up against corporate tax breaks. I don't care if it's for things regarding hockey stadiums or big development that's just for profit. It bleeds out our school aid fund, and I will not stand by and allow that to happen on my watch.
Bill Wild, on the issues that separate you from the other people in the room.
You know, the one thing I think that you will see on issues is that we're all Democrats, so there's probably very little daylight between us on those major issues. Besides experience and being a hands-on, pragmatic mayor who's got a track record of getting things done, probably the biggest difference in this election is really who's funded our campaigns. You know, when you take a look at us as candidates, I can tell you my campaign has been funded by Michiganders, people that live in Southeast Michigan. Representative Tlaib has got a lot of attention because she's raised over $1 million. A lot of those dollars are coming from California, coming from New York, coming from New Jersey. So what a lot of people want to know is, why are people from California, why are people from New York, why are people from New Jersey funding her campaign? And why is she taking a salary? That's something that a lot of people have been asking me as I'm knocking on doors throughout the district.
Brenda Jones, you'll be next.
Experience matters. I have experience. I have brought back civility to local government. We need someone who's able to reach across the aisle and know that you have to agree to disagree to help and to serve the citizens of your district. I've done just that in the job that I am doing now. There are things that I've done in the city of Detroit that I am ready to do as your next congressperson. I too have worked in a law firm, and so I have the experience of working in a law firm with lawyers. I too have owned my own business, and so I know how to work with people who come to DC. I am ready to bring back resources to the 13th Congressional District, ready to communicate with my constituents, ready to have someone there to bring and talk to the small businesses and faith group and everyone.
And that is time. I'll repeat the question every once in a while since we have 6 of you. The question again, though, on what separates you from your opponents tonight, Chanel Jackson.
So there are several things that separate me. I'm the most well-rounded candidate. I've got legislative experience. Beyond that, let me say this. First and foremost, I'm born and raised and educated in the 13th Congressional District, all the way through college and undergrad and grad school. But beyond that, I've got more legislative experience as it pertains to passing laws, but then I've got private sector experience. So I've worked on the ground helping to get people hired who are either underemployed or who need a job and an opportunity. I'm living our story and our struggle. The other thing is I believe in you. I believe people can think for themselves and don't need government to think for them. So I support all forms of quality public education. 56% of families in the city of Detroit have chosen charter schools for their children. I want strong traditional public schools, and I want strong charter schools because I believe parents can think for themselves and know what's best for their families.
And Coleman Young Jr., the second, I'm sorry.
I have a 12-year record. What separates me from the field is the fact that I've gotten the job done. I don't talk about what I'm going to do. I put my nose to the grindstone and I get it done. I've created over 10,000 jobs through movie tax credits, cut property taxes. I've passed historic civil rights legislation, making sure that pregnant women receive mandatory paid leave. I've provided energy cost recovery for small businesses. I've also appropriated over $700 million to the district. When you want someone that has a record of actually getting it done, not talking about what they're gonna do or what they wanna do, but actually done the work, that's reached across the aisle and gotten the job done, that has real experience, it has real results, it's provided real leadership. You're talking about Coleman Young. And so if I would be so humbled and honored to have your vote, I'm gonna continue that progress when I get to Congress.
And we have our first rebuttal of the evening. Rashida Tlaib would like to use the first of her 2. You've got 30 seconds.
Thank you so much. It's so important to know that I'm a mother. I was working full-time before I decided to leave my position at the Sugar Law Center for Economic and Social Justice, where I was fighting against driver's license responsibility fee, emergency manager, and reduced my hours and then left the job permanently so I can work it as hard as my campaign team. So as a mom, I did not want to hurt my children or make them feel what I have decided, and I had every legal right to do that under the FEC rules. More importantly, I have over 6,200 donations from across the country that are grassroots donations that are not from Plant Moran, $5,000 or any corporation.
This is the time.
But it's very
important. These are the rules that you all have agreed to. And I understand, but you'll need to take that out of time for another answer perhaps later on. Let's move to our second question. I don't see any other further rebuttals on this. All right. I checked that. We have 2 rebuttals. First will be, I saw yours first, Coleman Young the second.
Wait. The discussion that we're having right now is the reason why we need to overturn the Citizens United decision. We also need to have public financing. Politics shouldn't be about who raised the most money or where it came from. It should be about who's got the best record and who's got the best vision. And if you're looking for that person, you need to vote for Coleman Young.
And the next rebuttal is from Ian Conyers. You've got 30 seconds.
With all due respect, I think the citizens of the 13th district and our entire state are tired of politicians who are claiming the success of our town and they're not willing to pay the tab on the work that needs to be done. This is the most economically deprived and cash-strapped district. We're tired of politicians claiming their record and not standing up for what they haven't done yet.
All right, we'll move on to my next. Oh, I'm sorry. No, one more rebuttal. Brenda Jones, the first of your 2. You've got 30 seconds.
Let me also add that I have 13 years experience as a legislator. Let me also add that I have represented as an at-large candidate more citizens than all of my opponents together. I have represented more citizens in the 13th district, and as an at-large candidate, 650,000 plus citizens in the city of Detroit I have represented. And so I am... I'm afraid that's
time. I'll look around the room before I start again. Everybody's set. Okay. We'll move on to my second question of the night. I'd like each of you to talk about the line between regulation and progress. River Rouge in the 13th district is losing a huge DTE footprint along with its jobs because coal is out. There have been quite a few fights over the Marathon plant in that district. So progress can be painful. How do you balance the needs of the environment and the safety of the citizenry with the needs of business, which often complains that regulations are costing us money and jobs? Rashida Tlaib, you're first.
Thank you. This is very personal because it's in my backyard. My father had 2 forms of cancer. He died at 67 from cardiac arrest because of the chemo and the decline in his health because of it. So we have to be moving towards making public health our priority. However, we could be creating more jobs. We are an international border. We could be having supply chain logistics industry where it's pollution-free kind of jobs. We are not looking at the kind of trade that's coming in through our state. For us to build one vehicle alone in Michigan, it has to pass through our state 7 times. But we're not allowing them to sit here, unpackage, and deliver those goods across the country. Those are the opportunities for us to be able to go towards greener jobs, towards jobs that doesn't hurt our health, because it's about time. We are tired of the smell in Southwest Detroit and Ecorse and Rouge. People in Melvindale don't deserve to live in that kind of environment anymore.
Same question, Bill Wild, about this very delicate balance to many.
You know, it is a delicate balance, and one of the things that when you travel throughout the 13th district, when you look at these communities, Devin had mentioned River Rouge, is they all need economic development. They're all struggling to try to deliver services today in older communities. So while we do have to keep an eye on regulation, and I can tell you that as your congressperson, protecting the Great Lakes in the state of Michigan will be one of my top priorities, if not my top priority. But at the end of the day, we also have to be business friendly because our metro area is competing against metros all across the country. I'm in favor of finishing the Gordie Howe Bridge. I'm in favor of rebuilding the Sulaks. I can tell you that our metro area, with the comeback of Detroit, with that new bridge, it's going to set us up as potentially the logistics hub for the Midwest, all the way from Toronto, all the way traveling to Detroit, to Toledo, all the way to Chicago.
Move to the other side of the studio now. Same question now for Brenda Jones.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is the difference, the line between regulation and progress. River Rouge losing the DTE footprint because coal is out. Been quite a few fights over the Marathon plant, which we just mentioned. So progress can be painful. I'm asking about the balance between serving the safety of the citizenry and of the environment with the needs of business to create jobs and economic activity.
Thank you for that question. Progress and regulation is important. And as your next congressperson, I will go to D.C. to fight for resources to bring them back to the 13th Congressional District to ensure that as we continue to progress, we are training our citizens for the skills and the careers that are needed today with the technology that is coming. I am ready to go to D.C. to fight and to ensure that laws are passed that will regulate and be there for every community to ensure the safety of every community. It's personal to me because I see jobs leaving the phone company as I worked for them and retired with 31 plus years.
And the next to answer this question is Chanel Jackson.
So Devin, you know, for me, there is no progress when people are hungry. So when I get to DC, absolutely, I'll work to strengthen the EPA, to stand up to some of the changes that we've seen President Trump make with the EPA. And we want to hold businesses accountable, absolutely. But at the end of the day, people need to be gainfully employed. We need to figure out how to get our folks trained to work in jobs in the new economy, but we need to value the industries that have really helped make Michigan and Southeast Michigan and Detroit great. And so for me, those two things don't have to happen in a silo. We can make sure that Marathon and companies like that are held accountable, but we can also honor them and be thankful for the jobs and the opportunities that they create in this region so that children can eat dinner at night and families can thrive.
And next on this question of striking this balance is Coleman Young II.
Yes, what we need to do is invest more in alternative energy. Solar, wind, hydroelectric, biodiesel, geothermal. These are the ways of the innovations of the future in which our children should participate in. We also need to make sure that we have a cap and trade program so we can also not only make sure that we keep emissions down, we can also make sure that business can thrive as well. I think if we do these things, this is what not only will make our economy hum, because people who are building solar panels in, like, say, Oakland County, or Oakland, California, and other such areas, they make over $40,000 a year on average just doing this. And I think that if we work with our apprenticeship programs, our pre-apprenticeship programs, within the Office of Apprenticeship Programs within the Department of Labor, we can be able to put people in the 13th District back to work. And I already have experience of doing this when I was in the legislature, when I voted for the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which made the state invest more in alternative energy. So we can produce energy and we can keep our environment safe.
That is time. And lastly, on this topic, barring any rebuttals, will be Ian Conyers.
Well, I've got to see this up close. I currently sit on the Energy and Technology Committee, and there's one thing that's clear in the state of Michigan is that the entire city and the state do not want to see us fight on this issue, and that's why you see it put to bed. When it comes down to places like River Rouge, the tagline of that city is where hard work lives. But at no point should the quality of life, should the breathing air affect that ability to thrive. When I think about the regulations and I think about the EPA, what comes to mind first is that we have one of the highest rates of asthma in African American children anywhere in the country. If we're not handling that first, we're failing our opportunity to thrive, and we're failing the 13th District.
Next question, Bill Wild, you'll be the first to take this one, and maybe I just have been thinking a lot about balance, because this is a question about balance as well. Your district is part city, part suburb, and in Southeast Michigan, there's long been a suspicion that if you're serving one, somehow you're not serving the other. I'd like to hear what you can do to make sure that the constituents of your district feel not only connected to you, but to each other. Bill Wild, you're first.
You know, that's something that I think is going to be very important in this district is, you know, roughly 60% of the district is in Detroit, but 40% of the district, 11 of the 12 cities are outside of Detroit. So I think that that's one of the things that separates my candidacy is that I know the local issues. I've been involved for over 20 years at the local level. I have the relationships with the mayors. Most of the mayors, city council members, school board members, they've endorsed my campaign, so they know that I know the issues. But at the end of the day, with my work on the regional level, I've been very active in Detroit. I've been working with the Southeast Michigan Council of Government on big regional issues like transportation, economic development. So it's going to take somebody with a skill set, and this is very important that this job is going to be very tough. It's going to be a very heavy lift. It's going to take a skill set, somebody that knows the issues, somebody that can balance the needs of Detroit and the suburbs, and somebody that can work in Washington to get things done.
And on this balance, next to talk is Brenda Jones.
Thank you. Relationships matter, and knowing people and talking to people and communicating with people matter. That's what I have been doing. That's what I'm ready to go to D.C. to continue to do. I am ready to have an office out in the areas that are in the suburban areas, as well as in the city of Detroit. I am ready to hold town hall meetings that will bring everyone together. I am ready to continue to work with the different mayors and the different city council members and all of the constituents to go out, to be accessible, to be available, to communicate with them, and again, to bring them together. I have gained those relationships with mayors in the positions that I've served as a council member. I am ready to take that farther to D.C. as your Congresswoman and bring those relationships all together, to bring them together, to work together, to represent the 13th Congressional District.
And we're talking about the balance of city and suburb in this district. Chanel Jackson, you're next.
So, Devin, I don't really think that there is, I don't really think that this is a huge issue, just to be frank with you. So, I'm born and raised in the city of Detroit, but like most people, you know, in this region, I've got relatives all around Wayne County. I've got family in Westland, River Rouge, Redford. And the thing that I'm hearing from them is the same thing that I'm hearing from my neighbors in Detroit and my family in Detroit. It's that the working class and the middle class is struggling. They don't feel like they can keep their heads above water, and they want government to work on their behalf. And so how we do that is sending a member to Congress who is able to build partnerships to get folks things that they need that'll help them keep resources in their pocket and in their community so that they can feed their children. So, you know, raising the earned income tax credit, credit for child care cost, more money for education so that they can transcend from poverty into the middle class. These are common issues that families across Wayne County are dealing with. And so I don't think that there's this stark difference.
And that is time. Next question, the next answer comes from Coleman Young II.
Yes, I've already done this. I represent 11 cities and 2 townships. I represent River Rouge and Ecorse right now. So I'm already dealing with that balance on a normal day basis. And I created 10,000 jobs. I've appropriated over $700 million to my district. These are things that I've done that I will continue to do. I think we need someone who can reach out and reach across the aisle, whether it's up there in Washington, I've done it in Lansing, or whether it's back home. I've continued to go out there and talk to the issues. I've been in their houses. I've been on these buses personally. I've knocked these doors personally. I've been in these community rooms personally. I've talked to these senior citizens and been in the senior citizen homes personally. I've been at these parks personally, and I've done this. So if you want someone who not only talks the talk, but can also walk the walk, who gets the job done, vote for Coleman Young.
And now we move to the other side of the studio, Ian Conyers.
Well, it's incredibly important to know that our district has separate communities, and one thing I promise to do is never pretend to be from where I'm not. I currently represent about 1/4 of Detroit, where I'm a 3rd-generation Detroiter and proud of that, but I also have the privilege of representing Lincoln Park, Allen Park, and Southgate. And what I've found in representing nearly 250,000 people over these last few years is that whereas the local issues are unique and different and need to be respected, what we expect from our federal government is the same. Families want a chance to live and learn in the community they're from. They want their children to have a chance to go to a good school, and they want to be protected and feel safe at night. You can ask Mayor Cuspa, Matakis, Mayor Karnes down in those towns. I've been fair, I've worked hard, and as the congressperson, I'll do just that. I'll work for each of the communities in our congressional district to bring home the resources that we deserve.
And again, lastly, this was a question about balancing the differences of this district. Rashida Tlaib.
So these are 12 incredibly beautiful neighborhoods and communities, and I've walked every single district, communities, met with seniors, different young people. And one of the things that really brings us all together is the issues. Less than half of our families in the 13th Congressional District don't own their own homes. Every single person from Redford Township to Romulus to all the way to Eastside Detroit telling me that they can't afford car insurance. They can't even budget for it. Those are the kinds of issues that is going to bring us together, and what I'm going to fight for all of us to have that just and fairness because we all deserve to thrive. So know that the issues is going to make us one community, one 13th Congressional District, and it's going to be easy to be able to represent everyone because we're all in the same boat. We're all experiencing the same challenges.
Our next question I'm going to ask is one that has been broiling in Washington and is spread all over the country. I'd like to talk about immigration policy. Many on the right often claim that Democrats just want wide open borders with few, if any, checks on immigration. So, including your feelings on whether ICE should be disbanded, give me your outline for a sensible and workable American immigration policy. Brenda Jones, you're first.
So let me start off by saying even Trump's daughter said that that was Trump's low point, immigration. And so, yes, when you look at ICE, if not disbanded, it at least needs to be mandated. I have had the opportunity to talk to immigrants, to hear their stories, to hear how one-year-olds have been dragged into court with no representation. I have had the opportunity to just go out and see what is going on, to see people being stopped for no reason, and to see children that are being deported away from their families. There is no reason why that should happen. And so, yes, there should be a fair policy. And what is going on now, it should not be going on. There is Border Control, who I believe that can handle the situations that are going on now. And so if ICE is there, the policies need to be mandated, and I'm ready to go to
Chanel Jackson, your thoughts on sensible, workable immigration policy?
Well, the first thing is it needs to be humane. What we have seen this president and his allies do is absolutely ungodly. It's not American. There is no love in that policy. And so absolutely what we do going forward has to be humane. We need to keep children with their families, and we don't need to criminalize children for being children and coming with their parents. I will say this, I mean, this is a country of laws. And so we do need to make sure that we have a comprehensive immigration plan that addresses and protects and respects our laws while balancing humanity and recognizing that all of us are immigrants, whether we were brought to these shores in chains or if we came here voluntarily. And so, you know, I'm ready to go to Congress to partner with like-minded, right-thinking leaders to have comprehensive reform that incorporates all of that.
Coleman Young II on immigration policy.
The first thing we need to do is have a pathway to citizenship. We need to make sure that they take a test, they pay a fine, and they get in the back of the line. Secondly, we need to restore temporary protective status. We also need to pass the Dreamers Act, so children who've been here for 3 years old, who've been undocumented since they're children, and only know America and nowhere else, can be able to stay here. We also need to make DACA, that's Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals, and DAPA, Deferred Action on Parental Arrivals, the law. America works best when it has open arms, not closed fists. And we should not be locking up our children. If we're not going to protect the children, if we're not going to protect our babies, why are we in public office to begin with? Our children deserve better. America is better. And when I'm Congressman, I will fight and stand for the ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
American immigration policy is the issue on this question. Ian Conyers, you're next.
We need to make sure that America stands up to that motto that it's always been, whether it's folks who are here right now struggling or making our communities greater, or those folks who wish and dream to immigrate to our country. We need to make sure that we have open arms. Specifically speaking to ICE, this is an organization that has not even existed for 20 years. If they are not doing everything they can do to treat folks with dignity, respect, we get rid of them. I think you haul the folks in, you put them in front of those questions, but you don't be naive about the fact that they don't know what they're doing. They're intentionally intimidating folks, and if you cannot understand the narrative of immigration, you must understand the narrative of separation. Any community in this country knows that it's not right to take children away from mothers or their families, and each and every day as a congressperson, I will keep the family at the core of my conversation.
Rashida Tlaib, you're next on immigration.
This is something I'm very passionate passionate about as a child of immigrants. As I am hearing from people across the country who want someone like me to win, people like us are not running for office. People that have experienced the broken immigration system are not running for office. And it's inspiring the nation to the possibility of someone like me with my name being Muslim and the possibility of being the first Muslim woman ever elected. The fact that that is like the American dream. You don't hear people talk about the German dream or the Canadian dream. There's only the American dream. And the pathway to citizenship is a must. We are now talking about walls instead of families. We're talking about division instead of bringing people together and looking at the tremendous asset of our immigration system when it works well. I love that I grew up in a community with 20 different ethnicities and Southwest Detroit. That is what makes America great, and I hope to strive and to use my own personal story to get people to wake up, to understand this broken immigration system needs to be fixed immediately so that we can put families together.
And last to speak on this topic of immigration is Bill Wild.
You know, I never thought that I would see a time in our country where our politicians used our children as bargaining chips. We've seen President Trump use the Dreamer children as bargaining chips to get his wall built. We've recently seen, trying to separate women from their children at our borders as a deterrent for immigration. What we need compassion. We can't give up the moral high ground in our country. Too many of our veterans, think about all the people that lost their lives in World War II, trying to build up that moral high ground for our country. What we need to do is we need a bipartisan solution to immigration. It is too big. We are being watched by every country around the world to see how we handle this issue. This is the way that we were built. Immigration is too important to our country. It's too important to our economy, and it's extremely important to the state of Michigan and the comeback of Detroit.
On to our next question. Over the years, quite a few Michigan Democrats favored a trade policy that was more protective, more aggressive when it came to tariffs on nations that created unfair barriers on American goods. Well, the president has given you exactly that. Is this something that you can give President Trump credit for and support? And if not, why not? Chanel Jackson, you're first.
Devin, in 2005, Michigan saw firsthand with the crazy policy of President Bush what happens when we institute tariffs on steel. A lot of folks who are thinkers on this issue suggest that that was the precursor to the Great Recession here in the state of Michigan. Anytime you've got a district like the 13th Congressional District, which is the poorest in the nation, we've got some of the highest unemployment in the nation, what we should not be doing or having leadership do is hamstring us and keep us from an ability to be able to work in an industry that is prospering and really the industry that has been the backbone of our economy. And so the tariffs that President Trump is proposing are preposterous and are going to be negative for our country. I'll fight against them, and I'll stand with right-thinking lawmakers to get a strong trade policy in place.
The president's trade policies, this question, Coleman Young II.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Devin. The first thing we need to do is get rid of NAFTA. The second thing we need to do is we need to tax corporations that ship our jobs overseas. And I believe if you make it in America, if you buy it in America, it should be made by Americans. The third thing we need to do is have an independent trade council to be able to make sure that we have fair trade, not free trade. And I also believe that we need to end currency manipulation. The fact that you have countries like China and Russia that manipulate our currency, if we were just to treat this as an illegal subsidy and levy a countervailing duty against it, we could increase manufacturing in America by 40%, create over 200,000 jobs in Michigan, close the American jobs gap by 72%, and increase the GDP of this country by $720 billion. This is something that's very important. We need fair trade, not free trade. We need a policy that's going to protect the working people of America and bring jobs home.
That is time. Ian Conyers, your turn on this question.
Great question and incredibly important to the state of Michigan. We are a regional and really global transit hub when it comes to bringing jobs in and sending our products out to the world. In the 13th district, it couldn't be more clear. We make stuff, we grow stuff, and when you come to tariffs, there's no way to win that war. I think specifically speaking about what President Trump has done, it's a particular shame to see us come to the point where where we are offending our traditional allies like Canada, where we are offending our NATO allies and all those folks who have traded with us traditionally. And as a congressperson, I'd work hard to eliminate that, to work hard to bring back the resources to our district, but lastly, to make sure that we always protect all of our Michigan products that are coming out, whether it's Ford, whether it's those things we're making down in Tech Town. We need to work hard to protect our intellectual capital and keep our trade going strong.
Next on American trade policy is Rashida Tlaib.
Detroit is the hub of trade. I mean, our number one trade customer right now is obviously in the United States is Canada, our neighboring country. And one of the things I think is very important to understand and recognize before we even proceed about tariffs is that our president is being reckless when it comes to tariffs. He is creating a trade war, and the approach that he's having, this combative kind of aggressive approach to this issue, is what is going to lead to even more dangerous route of these trade wars, that it's going to increase the price of food, the prices of things that we all need in our quality of life. It is important that folks need to sit down and renegotiate these unfair trade deals, not go out there and just place these tariffs and think that that's what's going to fix our issue here, and it's going to put us in an economic downturn.
And on trade, Bill Wild's turn.
So when you think about this, right now we're in the middle of a trade war that nobody wanted, nobody asked for it. When the president passed these tariffs on aluminum and steel, the big three automakers weren't asking for those tariffs. But when you look at it, they have the potential to raise the cost of vehicles by 20%. When you take a look at just the automotive jobs that are in the 13th Congressional District in Detroit and in those suburbs.
Bill, your mic was not up for the first 10 seconds of your answer. I think it's only fair to let you start over. It wasn't your fault. Just turning it on inside. Just if you would start over, if you could.
My second shot's better.
Yes, you get another minute.
So I'm going to go back to what I said. We're in the middle of a trade war that nobody asked for and nobody wanted, and I'm not sure it's one that we can win. When the president decided to put tariffs on aluminum and steel, the big three automakers, they weren't asking for these tariffs, but all of a sudden we're maybe looking at the day where automobiles are going to raise 20% on the cost. When you look at the jobs that are dependent on the automotive industry in Detroit in the 13th Congressional District, it's extremely chilling. Now, I do think that we need to push back on the Chinese on their theft and our intellectual properties. That's something that is a national thing that we all have to stand behind the president on. As far as NAFTA, we need to be realistic. We're 25 years into a global economy, so our residents' 401ks are invested in international stocks. Our pension plans for our employees are invested in international stocks. So we have to have a clearly defined goal on what our end goal is with these
and that's
tariffs.
time. I apologize for making you start over there. Brenda Jones, you're last on American trade policy.
Thank you. Let me just say, I believe that our president is being ridiculous with the tariffs that he wants to impose. What we have now and what we're looking at now with what the president wants to impose is something that will definitely impact the jobs that are in the 13th Congressional District. When you look at the tariffs that he wants to impose on paper, the tariffs that he wants to impose on different things, it is going to affect many of the jobs that we have. We have the automobile factories here in the city of Detroit and the surrounding areas in the 13th Congressional District. And so we're going to have to look at fair trade and come up with a law that we can live with, look at how NAFTA is being imposed and how the tariffs are being imposed. And so, yes, it is ridiculous.
And that is time. The next question, a number of Republicans. Oh, I'm sorry. I see. Yes, I missed the rebuttal. Yes. Oh, you get 30 seconds.
I just want to clarify.
Coleman Young second using his next rebuttal.
I just wanted to say, one, I'm opposed to the tariffs that Trump has levied. I want to make that clear. But we do need to do something about countries that use illegal subsidies and they produce products that are less than they cost and put them in the American market, dump them in the American market. It hurt American jobs, hurt American auto workers, it hurt American people. That's something that we cannot stand for, and when I'm in Congress, I won't. And I don't think that NAFTA has been a good deal for the working people.
And that is time. And you'll get first shot on this next question, Coleman Young. A number of Republicans are insisting that Democrats are trying to usher in a kind of American socialism. Bernie Sanders won the primary in Michigan and unapologetically refers to himself as a democratic socialist. Other times he calls himself just a socialist. I'm curious as to whether you would describe yourself as a socialist, and why or why not? Coleman Young II, you're first.
I describe myself as a progressive. I also believe that this is not about socialism. This is just about fair share. We just want corporations to be able to pay their fair share when it comes to taxes. I personally believe that health care is a fundamental right, not a privilege. I believe in everything that's universal health care, universal child care for our working women out there, universal pre-K for our children because they deserve it, and universal background checks for guns. These are not left or right principles. These are just American values that people should have. You should not go broke in America because you're sick. You should not have to worry about your children and whether or not they're going to be shot down by a gunman at your school. You shouldn't have to worry about whether or not you can afford to pay child care if you're working full time. You should not be struggling to make ends meet if you work full time in America. These are American values. I am a progressive. I believe in those values. I stand for those values.
And
I
that
got
is
a 12-year
time.
record of
That is time. Ian Conyers, your thoughts on American or lack of socialism?
Well, I find it mighty disheartening that a group of conservatives are looking to label our party. I'm a strong Democrat, and when you look at things that President Trump does, like create tariffs in the agricultural industry and then hand out $12 billion, I think that's the pot calling the kettle black. I'm a strong Democrat. I promote the social safety net. I think that if we're not helping people and serving the least of thee, we can't even talk about the ladders to opportunity. That's felt nowhere more than in the 13th Congressional District. I believe in making sure that everyone has access to a job, everyone has access to great public education, and that everyone has access to health care. You know, there's a bill that's been out there for a long time, H.R. 1000, that makes sure that everyone has a chance to work in this country. Everyone who wants to work has the opportunity to do so, and I support that wholeheartedly.
Rashida Tlaib, you're next on this matter.
I think it's not a big secret that people for Bernie support me. Our revolution supports me because I truly believe in universal health care. I truly believe everyone could work hard and not live in poverty. I truly believe that no one ever should go hungry in their homes, especially when you see the imbalance and unjust society when it comes to tax breaks for the rich. And when I walk by the hockey stadium downtown Detroit while other schools down the street from my home are getting closed, where $400 million is being taken away from a school aid fund into an adult playground. That kind of imbalance and unjust is what drives me to run. It which drives me to say that I will fight and not back down on corporate greed. You can label me a socialist, you can label me a Democrat, you can label me a liberal, but what I am for is the people of the 13th Congressional District. Every single one of them deserves a fighter that is not going to back down until they are able to thrive, to be able to live freely without having to worry about where their next meal is coming from, without having to worry that they feel like they're less than.
Bill Wild, your turn on this matter.
So I think the American people are they're tired of labels. I can tell you that as a mayor, I've been described as, because I'm a small business owner, as maybe he has the head of a CEO, but he's got the heart of a social worker. And I found that by balancing that out was the way that we were able to make progress. I can tell you that what we look at, when we look at America in the 13th Congressional District, it's been said several times tonight, is one of the most extremely challenged from a median income standpoint in the entire country. But what Americans are seeing is that there is a bigger divide between the extremely wealthy and the rest of America. The middle class is evaporating. So when you take a look at the recent Republican tax cut that was voted yes by every Republican, no by every Democrat, it gave on average a tax cut to the wealthiest Americans of $33,000. That is the median income of the 13th Congressional District.
And next on this matter is Brenda Jones.
Thank you. I'm a strong Democrat, and I know that people are fighting for democracy, and people in other countries want democracy. I believe that what is going on now is truly unbelievable. I will fight for the progressive, and I will fight to bring the Republican for an understanding that you have to make sure that there is parity and that no one should go without food on their table, and Democrats fight for the middle class and to make those that are in poverty become a middle class. And when I go to Congress, as a member of Congress, I will fight for just that there is no poverty.
And last on this question is Chanel Jackson.
So, Devin, I'm an African-American woman. And so I'm like my aunts, my mothers, my cousins, you know, and my grandmother. You know, I consider myself a common sense Democrat. So I'm certainly a very moral person, and my faith means everything to me. And in that faith, I understand, like the women before me, that people deserve a social safety net. They deserve an opportunity for government to work on their behalf when they need help. They deserve strong public schools of all types. They deserve an opportunity really to be able to live and to thrive. And so, you know, as our congressperson, as our congresswoman, I'm going to carry those principles with me and that spirit with me, which is a moral sense of obligation to make sure that government is working for the everyday person as a common sense Democrat.
We've got time for one more question before we get to your closing statement. So this will be the last question, and Ian Conyers, will start with you on this. I'd like to hear all of your thoughts on the Second Amendment. We've just had gun violence mentioned in the last round of answers. Be as specific as you can, please, and tell me what you believe is the best approach to gun ownership in America. Ian Conyers.
In the United States of America, the law is clear, but it's not been applied equally. In the city of Detroit, where I'm from, it's a tale of two cities when it comes to using weapons and owning weapons. I represent a district right now that has some of the highest gun violence in the United States of America. That's a story that I know personally. I've witnessed friends lose their lives in the streets to gun violence, only to have a tepid response and no national coverage or no national narrative. Now, I believe in the Second Amendment. However, when it comes to people printing guns or being unjustly profiled for owning guns, I'm absolutely against it. I believe that Black Lives Matter, that we need to stand up every time there's a killing on either side when it's happening in our own community, and I've given my life to work in ending the narrative of gun violence in Detroit.
On guns next is Rashida Tlaib.
I'm a big supporter of Moms Demand Action, and a lot of us across the country, especially a mother like myself, all of us have been talking about this. And one of the things that is on our side is that majority of Americans believe that we can fix this gun crisis in our country without impacting our Second Amendment. And we can do that with universal background check. We can do that by taking out assault weapons from being so accessible. There's so much that we could be doing right now to ensure that the thousands of people that are victims of gun violence in our country are protected. And it won't be the permanent fix, but doing nothing is not an option at this point. And we can't stand by and pretend that the NRA and others, who I will never, ever take money from, are the experts on this issue. I think sometimes I truly believe we need to clear out the room and put moms in the room, Republican, Democrats, socialists, liberals in the room. I bet you we can fix the problem right away.
And on gun policy, next, Bill Wild.
You know, I too am a believer in the Second Amendment, and my family, we have guns, and I can tell you that my guns look like my father's guns and my grandfather's guns. I am not a fan of these AR-15s. I'm not a fan of assault rifles. I think that we should ban them. I think that they are weapons of war. I think that we have to have stronger background checks. I think that we should raise the minimum age from 18 to 21 to get a gun. I also think that we need to ban bump stocks. I think that we need to outlaw these high magazine cartridges. At the end of the day, I think that 90% of America is ready for some sensible reform. And I'm not saying that we should take people's guns away, because I don't think that we should, and I don't think that the American people want that. But at the end of the day, I think with the violence that we've seen recently, that we should be working together on making our schools safer, and that there should be some wiggle room as far as sensible gun reform. America wants it, and America deserves it.
And next on American gun policy is Brenda Jones.
I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe that American families should be kept safe. I believe that there should be more background checks. And as your congressperson, I will work on laws that will help prevent the loopholes that are there currently, the loopholes such as where you can go to a gun show or a trade show and just purchase a gun without having a background check. There are certain loopholes in the law that should not be there that we need to make sure the laws will prevent. Again, I am Brenda Jones. I do believe in the Second Amendment, but I do believe that our families should be kept safe.
Gun policy next for Chanel Jackson.
So I am a mother of a 2-year-old daughter, and nothing on this earth means more to me than my daughter. And so I'm thankful for the Second Amendment. As a single mom who lives on the North End in the city of Detroit, I recognize that I need to be able to protect my daughter. And so I 100% support the Second Amendment and our ability to legally own guns responsibly. However, because I'm a common sense Democrat, I recognize that we need comprehensive reform. First of all, everybody who purchases a gun anywhere in America should have to have a background check. So much of this is just common sense. And so I support that absolutely. The bottom line is this: we need leadership in Washington, D.C. that understands that you need partnerships and the ability to think in a nuanced way to be a strong leader on gun reform or any issue that we're dealing with. And I'm committed to being that for us.
And lastly on this topic, and the last for our question and answer session here, Coleman Young II.
I support the Second Amendment with limits. I think we should ban AR-15s. I think we need to have a ban on high-capacity magazines. We need universal background checks, and we also need a national gun registry. These are things that are very important because we should not have to worry about the safety of our children when they go to school, whether they are in rural America, whether they are in suburban America, or whether they're in major cities. This is fundamentally wrong. I also think that we need to use smart technology such as fingerprint IDs or RFID chips around the finger when they use the gun in order to save lives. And we should not be printing guns off the internet. These are dangerous times, and we need serious leadership. And with me as your congressman, I will make sure that I will do everything within my power to keep us safe. I will protect the Second Amendment, but I'll also make sure it's done within reason.
And that takes us now to our closing statements for tonight, and we will go in the reverse order that we did for the opening statements, which means that you'll be first. Yes, Coleman Young II.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Yes.
These are serious times, and they call for serious legislators. When I'm in Lansing, it felt like I was running through a brick wall, but I still appropriated over $700 million to the district. I still created 13,000 jobs, and I still passed historic landmark civil rights legislation for Michigan working women. When I was here last time, I said some things that were offensive. As a strong Christian, I believe that you should not take nor give offense. The fact that I offended people, I am truly sorry from the bottom of my heart, and I hope that you can forgive me. And when I become your next congressman, I'm going to pay it forward by making sure we get the job done together. Thank you for your time. God bless you. And if you want somebody with a 12-year record who's been elected for 4 terms, working and fighting for Michigan families, vote for Coleman Young.
I'll remind you all remember that you have a minute, but just reminding our viewers as well, they all have 1 minute for their closing statement. And Chanel Jackson, your closing thoughts.
I just want to take a minute to talk to you all from my heart. As I said earlier, I consider myself Detroit's daughter. I'm an everyday person who has lived our triumphs, our tribulations, and I just know that we need to make sure that everything we do, that we need policymakers in place who are optimistic about our future and what it holds for our children. I'm the youngest woman of color ever elected in our state's history to serve. I'm one of only 2 African-American women in history to serve as Speaker Pro Tem in the Michigan House of Representatives. See, I was taught that if you love God, you love your community, you're willing to do the hard work, we'll raise you up because we believe in you. You've got an opportunity to show our daughters and our sons that if they do the right thing, if they love God, and if they're willing to serve, that through your vote for me, that they too can go to Congress and be our voice. I'm Detroit, born and raised and bred. I need your vote on Tuesday.
Brenda Jones, your closing statements now.
As a member of the Detroit City Council, I have served many of the 13th congressional people. I've been to many of the 13th congressional meetings. I'm ready to go to Congress as your congressperson, to take the things that I have learned on to DC, to write laws that will protect you. I believe that our quality of life cannot depend on our zip codes. And that is what is going on. Our quality of life is depending on our zip codes. I have experience, I have leadership. I have done the job in the largest municipality, so I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to go and serve, to support, to protect, and to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. So I'm asking you to vote Brenda Jones.
We have heard 3 closing statements, 3 more to go. And Bill Wild, you're next.
Thank you. Well, as you've seen here tonight, that we're all Democrats, so between us, there's not a lot of daylight between us on the issues. Maybe substance, maybe some of our, our demeanors and experience. But at the end of the day, it's time for you to make a decision. One of the questions I raised earlier was one of the differences was Representative Tlaib, the people that funded her campaign. 80% of this $1 million that she raised came from California, New York, New Jersey. So at the end of the day, what I want to know and what I'm hoping that the rest of you want to know is, what do these people expect for that money? So perhaps that she'll use some of her time tonight to answer that question. But I also want to do another thing, is I want to thank Congressman John Conyers. The congressman served this state and our district for the last 53 years, and I don't think we give him enough credit for that. He's left some incredibly large shoes to fill, and I look forward to trying to earn his respect and carry on his legacy.
And that is time. Final comments tonight from Rashida Tlaib.
Thank you so much. My approach to public service has always been unique. And I think the success of my fundraising, the grassroots, just amazing support across the country is thanks to Donald Trump. Donald Trump tries to ban Muslims from coming into our country, but a lot of Muslims across the country do not want us banned from Congress. They want to have a voice there. They want their children to see someone like me with my name, my faith, in office, swearing, and before them, so they can see that they are part of this country as much as anyone else. And so I'm very proud of that. But even more is that I was the first Muslim woman ever elected in the Michigan legislature. Many people don't know that. But why is that something that I don't even talk about all the time? Because the services that I offer, the neighborhood service center that I'm going to create throughout the district is going to help people through everyday issues, those challenges, because voting the right way for the families of the 13th is not enough. We have to go beyond that. We have to make sure that they get resources today, and if there's somebody that can do that, that's me. And I can tell you—
That is time, I'm afraid.
Yep.
And lastly, Ian Conyers, your closing statements.
Well, thank you for tuning in tonight. I think it's very clear that we're all Democrats, but we have very different ways of handling business. I'm running because I'm finished with the old ways. No longer will we let politicians claim the credit for Detroit's comeback, but not pay the tab for the work left to be done. I care so much about representing this district that I'm leaving my seat in the state Senate. I'm giving up something because we're in a civil rights generation and we can no longer accept comfort and convenience from elected officials. I'm stepping up to end the narrative on gun violence, to bring back resources and transportation, and to continue the work that President Obama and policies like his worked hard to make our country better. I'm standing on big shoulders, not only my great uncle, John Conyers Jr., but of my great grandfather, John Conyers Sr., who got to Detroit in 1924 and decided to build his family here. I need your vote on Tuesday, August 7th.
And our hour has absolutely flown by. I'm so soon. So grateful to all of you, the candidates, for this a vigorous debate. Thank you very much for being here. I'm so grateful for you to be here watching as well. I want to remind you, again, there is no Republican primary in the 13th Congressional District. So whoever from this stage, from this studio, wins the August 7th primary will almost certainly be the next representative heading to Capitol Hill. WDIV Local 4 committed to covering politics throughout this election season. We hope you will join us during our newscast, of course, leading up to the primary and beyond. And of course, we invite you to watch Flashpoint every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. on Local 4 for even more in-depth political conversations. In fact, coming up this week, both Sandy Pensler and John James will be here to discuss the Senate race. A reminder about the importance of making your opinion count at the polls. Be heard. Make sure you go vote. And we'll see you tonight for Local 4 News at 11.
Last time we had an election for governor, U.S. Senate, U.S. House, and the Michigan legislature, 56% of registered voters in Macomb County did not vote. 62% in Wayne County, 56% in Washtenaw County, and 52% of registered voters in Oakland County did not vote. Now we all have political opinions. Don't just share them online. Share them in the voting booth. Local 4 and Click on Detroit. Political coverage that matters.
Make your opinion count. Be heard. Go vote.